Good morning, everybody. This is a live emergency briefing as Tropical Storm Beryl is really starting to intensify and looks like it could undergo rapid intensification in the last 12 hours on approach to landfall early morning on Monday. So conditions are going to start to deteriorate later on tonight. National Hurricane Center shows that track is shifting ever so closely to the Houston area, and I wonder if that trend is going to continue. I do think this is going to be a rapidly intensifying hurricane on approach to the coastline. That's why we need to pay very close attention to it. Watch that 95 west longitudinal line and watch that very closely, as it could even parallel that line as it moves off to the north. Looking at radar, still looks like it is moving off to the west-northwest, and definitely is organizing as well. You can see that convection wrapping all the way around the center, and that creates a recipe for big problems, because once this storm gets vertically aligned, then it's going to rapidly intensify without bound. And we also have this supercell storm just to the southeast of Corpus Christi. I do think that there's going to be a big time tornado outbreak with this tropical cyclone as well. The front and the front right quadrants, as this tropical cyclone lifts off to the north, that's where the tornado threat is going to be the most significant. And you also have this cyclonically curved coastline of Texas. That's even going to help spin up this compact tropical cyclone. It's compact in size. That'll allow the wind spiraling around the topography here to help spin this up, almost like what happens at the Bay of Campeche, but to a lesser extent. But with this type of a compact tropical cyclone, they can intensify very rapidly. And some of the high resolution hurricane models are showing that Beryl could even be more intense than we originally thought. And you can definitely see on visible satellite that the inner core is a lot more impressive. After a period last night when the convection completely died out around the tropical cyclone, I even saw some of the hurricane hunters saying, is this thing even a tropical cyclone anymore if there's no convection near the center? All very valid points, except that I had a very strong low-level center and just had to have a convective burst in the middle of the night to get back on track to start to reorganize. So I'm watching this latitudinal line right here. It still is moving, drifting off to the west of that, but eventually it's going to begin a northward turn. And that'll probably take it up just to the northeast of Matagorda, but it'll bring this dangerous onshore flow right up into Houston, Galveston. That'll cause a potentially life-threatening surge on those barrier islands, Galveston Island, even out toward the Boulevard Peninsula. And also you can see this dry air wrapping into the circulation. That's going to lead to the development of instability, surface heating, and the development of supercell storms that are going to be whipping from east to west, making landfall with wedges, water spouts, supercell-induced water spouts, just big frickin' problems with this storm system, especially with that dry air kind of interacting with the circulation. And after this makes landfall and drifts through East Texas, it's still going to be having that tornado potential as it moves a little bit inland. And you can definitely see here on infrared satellite, of course, it is a lot more convection near the center of this. That's what leads to the latent heat release and the surface pressure falls that really intensify these storms. The heroes that are the hurricane reconnaissance aircraft, measuring that steady drop in pressure. The latest advisory has it at 65 miles an hour now, so definitely is ramping up with that convection near the center. This is at about 18Z Sunday. This is a little bit earlier than that, so I would say that this tropical cyclone is a little bit better organized, and the HAFS-B model has it at 15Z, which is right about now 993 central pressure. Watch this 95W longitudinal line. It goes just west of it, and you can definitely see these hot towers, supercell storms whipping around the inner core of this tropical cyclone. That leads to surface pressure falls, rapid release of latent heat, and you can also see these tornadic supercells developing over water within that dry slot, that instability over water. You even have some of those coming inland near Rockport, up toward Port Lavaca, Matagorda Bay here. I do think that this hurricane's probably going to hit this no man's land, and we're going to have to intercept it by car. But look at it ramp up, 984 millibar central pressure. Here's your 95 west longitudinal line. So this model, the HAFS-B, takes it in a little bit further west, very close to Matagorda, Bay City, and look at that at 9Z. This is at about 4 a.m. when this comes ashore. So we're going to be running a marathon live stream starting at about 3 to 4 p.m. this afternoon. We're going to start out working the tornadic supercells, and then we're going to transition to the inner core of this hurricane, covering the eye, of course, and the dramatic onshore flow, storm surge flooding. Look at these supercell storms that are lining up, coming ashore as well. Definitely a donut on the HAFS-B model. One of the newer hurricane models has it dropping into the low 970s. That's the 6Z run. And now we'll pop on over to our good old friend, the HWRF, the old trusty HWRF model. Still the 6Z run. The HWRF deepens this thing even further. There's the 96W longitudinal line. And it does look like some of the models are shifting a little bit east, but look at what the HWRF does, bombing it out to a 969 millibar central pressure right over Matagorda Bay. Look at that dangerous onshore flow here, life-threatening storm surge all the way up through Galveston Island. So you're going to be having that onshore flow into Galveston Island. Looks like the heavy rain is also going to move in there. And then these tornadic supercells come in about 7, 8 in the morning as well. Likely several tornado warnings near the Houston area with this 977 millibar formidable tropical cyclone just off to your west, at least according to this model. I wouldn't be surprised if it shifts even further to the right just because of how progressive that flat trough is in the central U.S. So still keep an eye. Watch this like a hawk, especially Galveston Island, Boulevard Peninsula. I still think likely a life-threatening storm surge is coming to you. And the inner core of this hurricane rapidly intensifies. Big onshore flow out here. A donut shape happening. Look at that donut, folks. Coming in. And after this moves inland, during the day on Monday, you're going to have a tornado outbreak likely beginning as that dry air wraps around the circulation, leads to greater instability, and you're going to have this pipe of supercells lined up one after another, likely producing significant tornadoes as it lifts off to the north through the Texas piney woods. You just basically look at this as a formidable surface low with dry air wrapping in, giving a little bit of an elevated mix layer. Even some subtle increases in the mid-tropospheric flow associated with a distantly teleconnected from that trough, but even that could create a little bit more favorable wind shear in this northeastern quadrant for tornadoes. And I think an outbreak of tornadoes is likely. Even the HWRF model is resolving these individual supercell storms within the northern primary convective band. Just in case you can't see my mouse and I'm going over it, watch this convective band right here. That's going to be capable of producing significant tornadoes. There's your surface low lifting up through the Texas piney woods. Houston's down in this area. Get dry slotted, believe it or not. So a big dry slot coming in, and right on the nose of that dry slot is where you get the formation of that dominant convective band. And that's what I'm very concerned about for even the threat of a significant tornado on Monday. This is Monday, 21Z, 4 p.m., peak heating. And these rippers right here, right along this dominant convective band, these are going to be supercell storms, numerous tornado warnings likely with this. I think that this tropical system is going to be remembered for the tornado outbreak and also for its surprises with Houston, because I think it could be shifting a little bit closer to the Houston area. Galveston Island likely is going to have big problems, big squalls, landfalling, tornadic supercells as well. And also, I do think that one positive with this is that the models are trending toward a faster moving storm. And it looks like by early Tuesday, it's going to be all the way up to the Arklatex. And so should avoid the Hurricane Harvey style mega disaster at the very least. But each of these tropical cyclones are unique in their own way. But it's natural for us to compare to previous events as humans and as scientists. When you start storm chasing for 30 years, you start picking apart a very large database of previous storms that you've chased. I probably chased 50 or 60 tropical cyclones in my career, maybe even more than that. Lost my car to Hurricane Ian back in the day. And I do think that this thing has the potential to go big. You know how it goes when they approach this portion of the coastline. You have that concavity in the coastline here too. The coastline itself is cyclonically curved as you get a little bit closer to South Texas. You gotta think that these hurricanes, when they approach Corpus up through Matagorda, that they feel that curvature and it helps to spin them up a little bit and accelerate that rapid intensification. Tornadoes are closely related to topography, and it definitely makes sense that also hurricanes would also be related to it. So this continues to spin up. I'm going to pull up the HMON model. It's also one that we have to consider, waiting carefully for these 12Z model runs. But the HMON has it a little bit further west, a little closer to Corpus, Port Aransas area. Seems like it is a little bit more of an outlier with this further west track, but it even intensifies it up to 978. But a little bit longer residence time over water, a further east track up near Matagorda Bay, which is being indicated by some of those other models, would give this tropical cyclone an extra couple of hours over the water, which is a big deal when it's bombing out and intensifying rapidly on approach to the coastline like this. If this tropical cyclone had a little bit more time over the water, then we would have big problems. We'd be talking about a major hurricane, and we still might be anyway. You can see some of the 12Z model guidance. Most of these models don't intensify it even into a Category 1. There is the official track, which takes it obviously up to a Category 1. But these types of models right here often will underdo the rapid intensification process. I'm definitely leaning toward more of a suite, more of an average of the HWRF, HMON, HAFS-A, and B models a little bit more. But that is interesting. That's the 12Z guidance trending up just even a little bit more there, folks. And looking at the latest satellite again. These are mesoscale systems, so they do evolve relatively quickly. Not as quick as a tornadic supercell, but you'll notice that in between even like 5 or 10 minutes of satellite updates that you can still have dramatic changes. One thing I'm noticing is near the center of this hurricane, you're definitely starting to get these convective bursts. Hot towers starting to form. That's starting to telegraph that rapid intensification is about to begin and continue in earnest as it lifts off to the north. You got your 95W longitudinal line, 96, and it does look like it's hugging that 95 a little bit more closely. It'll probably wobble back a little bit northwest as this convection wraps around this storm. It has some asymmetries right now, so it's definitely not moving in a straight line. You've got Brownsville here just to the west of it. You've got some of these higher towers that are coming in. Those could be associated with tornado potential as well. So definitely seeing this intensification trend continue. Thanks everybody for joining Team Dominator here. We are down in position, and this is what an organizing tropical cyclone looks like. Look at all that convection on the northern side of this right up here. You've got a lot of convection starting to wrap around the northern edge of that inner core, definitely starting to wrap around that dropping low pressure. You can start to see some of the tops of those clouds begin to pinch off the center of circulation. Wouldn't even be surprised if this has a decent eye formation later on today as well as that convection continues to intensify. But definitely this storm is organizing, and the scary thing is that it is organizing on approach to the Texas coastline. You can see that concavity with the coastline. You've almost got this cyclonic curvature right there. All of these bays and inlets are going to be storm surge prone, but it all depends on the exact track of this compact tropical cyclone. You really have to get into the onshore flow here in the inner core of the hurricane to get that really life-threatening storm surge. But areas like the Boulevard Peninsula and Galveston Island will surge even with the onshore flow a little bit further removed. But look at all these hot towers. You can definitely see that there's some subsidence in between them, kind of in the middle, and that's going to be the center of circulation. That pressure is dramatically dropping. I do think that this could even be a major hurricane still, just because it's so compact, and it's really going to feel that cyclonically curved coastline that's going to help spin it up quite a bit. And you really, Houston, Galveston, you definitely want this to drift as far west of that 95W line as possible, because if this dangerous onshore flow on the right semicircle of the hurricane comes right up Galveston Bay, that's going to make a big difference for Houston, especially with such a compact storm. The fact that it's not a large storm, though, is at least another piece of good news for the Texas Gulf Coast, but I do think that this thing is going to be causing some major problems when it comes in. Look at that HWRF model. That is scary, folks, because that takes it into 969 millibars on approach. and kind of shows you that that is even a reasonable scenario in nature, that this thing could become a major hurricane. We've seen it. We saw it happen with Harvey, of course. You never want to compare tropical cyclones, but it's natural as humans and as scientists capable of advanced thought. Let's take a look quickly and see now what the Weather Prediction Center has on the day 2 outlook. Weather Prediction Center has a moderate risk for flash flooding across eastern Texas. Probably should be upgraded to a high just because this slug of rainfall is near certainty. But notice how the moderate risk also comes into the Houston area, downtown Houston, extending all the way up to the Arklatex. By Tuesday morning, this thing's going to be up near the Arklatex, bringing with it tornadoes and flooding as well. But definitely realizing that eastward shift, that brings the Houston area into that moderate risk for flooding. Basically, between Matagorda and the Houston area, that's where that moderate risk is included. I do want to cover that inland tornado threat with you as well. So we are going to pop up the HRRR model. You never want to use this model for the tropics. It's a convective allowing model. It just doesn't have the right relationship with the ocean surface to be accurate. That's why I saw some of the young meteorologists out there using that model, and you definitely don't want to, but we're going to use it for tornadoes after it moves inland, not focusing on the exact location of it. But there is your tropical cyclone coming into the coast. Looks like the HRRR actually does have a pretty good feel of it. But what I'm worried about for Houston by tomorrow morning is this conveyor belt of supercell storms in this dominant convective band. These are going to have tornado warnings, flash flood warnings, mass chaos ripping up Galveston Bay with that onshore flow, flooding around it, coastal flooding too around Galveston Island and the Boulevard Peninsula. And you also have the strong wind shear here when you got like a 60 to 70 knot 1 kilometer wind, basically a strong low-level jet in the northeastern quadrant of this hurricane, funneling right up Galveston Island, Galveston Bay, right up into downtown Houston. That's going to be associated with damage and also tornado potential. Looking at your 0 to 1 kilometer EHI, it definitely shows you that front right quadrant, how dangerous that's going to be for tornadoes. And you're going to have these supercell storms coming in all day on Monday. We are likely going to be chasing this tornado threat as it evolves across the Texas piney woods. It lifts up eventually toward the Lufkin area. Sabine River has some very favorable shear profiles for tornadic supercells. I'm going to drop down a little bit so that you can see that hodograph. Look at that 0 to 1 kilometer shear vector. That's 30 plus knots right there between the surface wind, which is about southeasterly in this quadrant, and a south due southeasterly 1 kilometer wind at about 50 knots. So that hodograph being plotted there in the front upper left quadrant of the hodograph curve is textbook. And look at the instability. So this is going to be a big deal. You've got a lot of cape up there for a tropical system, even some little bit of breaks in the clouds that potentially could work their way in. And you've got a lot of directional shear even, going from southeasterlies at the surface to almost a due southerly at about 3 kilometers to even south-southwesterly aloft. This is a textbook tornado producer here, and you're going to have an outbreak of tornadic supercells during the day on Monday, and we are going to be covering it. We're going to be live, of course. There's the center of your cyclone. Possibly a MCV coming through, mesoscale convective system 2 coming in through Oklahoma near the Red River. It's going to help push it off to the northeast, but you definitely got to watch out for that tornado potential. Moving right up into northeastern Texas, anywhere along this band, north of Houston, up north of the Piney Woods, anywhere in that northeastern quadrant, even further up near the Arklatex, this mode of convection could have some serious tornado potential with it as well. Look at that ripper down there. And yes, you could get tornadoes as well all the way up to the Arklatex tomorrow afternoon anywhere across this zone, and with this dominant convective band that's going to be moving into western Louisiana, that's all going to have tornado potential with that as that tropical cyclone lifts inland. This will be into eastern Texas here. But watch out, Houston, Galveston. It looks to me like this primary convective band might set up right over your location with tornadoes, flooding, squalls, damage, winds gusting like 70, 80 miles an hour. All big problems out there in the Houston area ahead for this storm system. Probably should make sure I'm even live. Yep, still live. Thanks everybody for tuning in. You gotta be kidding me. Thanks everybody. Welcome new Team Dominator members too. Brian is back from New York City. He's actually got Gizmo. He's watching Gizmo, and he's caught the coronavirus, so he's going to be moderating our live stream with a little bit of an illness out there. So we're going to have to wish Brian our best. But this hurricane is definitely intensifying. I'm at Corpus Christi radar. And you can definitely see on satellite these convective bursts on the north side of the circulation, and they're wrapping right in. You can definitely tell that the pressure is starting to fall there. Wind will start to cut right across isobars, going in toward that low pressure as well. Probably will develop the mesovortices along the inside of the eye wall as that continues to lift off to the northeast. And look at these outer bands that are coming in. Might even get some waterspout potential with some of these. So we are going to be activating waterspout mode here shortly. I'm with Local Man Weather right now. He's going to be slinging reports. Edgar is trying to get down here from his 11-year anniversary, He's coming down as well. Look at this thing try to morph into a supercell storm, even in the left quadrant. This is down south of Corpus Christi area. Look at that thing intensify. It does seem to be moving off to the northwest, so we're probably good here. Port Lavaca, maybe even a little bit further to the northeast. Matagorda would be a spot to intercept this hurricane. Everyone will just be packed into this inlet here in Matagorda at like 4 in the morning. Definitely hurricane chasing is becoming mainstream. A lot more people chase these hurricanes now. It's a slow moving target. They're a little bit easier to chase. You've also got this outer band coming into the Houston area right now. Down near Dickinson, Texas City, got a nice squall coming in. You have to wonder if even these are going to start wrapping up a little bit and developing tornado potential. We got the moderate risk flooding being shifted toward the Houston area. We don't have any watches out yet. 10% area tomorrow up and down the Sabine River, even up into southwestern Arkansas. This is the day 2 tornado probabilities from the Storm Prediction Center. This is tomorrow on Monday. Right over the Sabine River, Shreveport, Lufkin, down to Houston. You could be included in that. But today, we got a 5% tornado threat as well. From Port Lavaca up through Houston area, once again. So we are going to begin our storm coverage here very shortly. Let's see exactly where the wind shear is setting up right now. It's actually maximized right about here near Port Lavaca. You've got about 100, 0 to 1 helicity. So I do think that there is some tornado potential with this convective band. The greatest wind shear is kind of located right over Matagorda right now. There's your tropical cyclone just off to the south. Let's watch this as we step forward. That shear doesn't really come ashore all the way through about 4 p.m. But the RAP model definitely shows that onshore flow coming into Galveston. Sometimes you can increase your storm relative helicity a little bit as these supercell storms will approach the coastline. And they are very visible too. They're very well ventilated, these supercell storms, when they come in tropical cyclones, believe it or not. They are very well ventilated. I'm going to be watching this cluster right here as well, just offshore Matagorda, as it comes a little bit closer to Port Lavaca. We just had a shower move right through. You got this one up near El Campo. This one's producing quite a bit of lightning down near Corpus. That could have some waterspout potential as well. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Watch out, Houston. I think you're going to have some big problems up near Houston, as that convective band is going to be coming in. The moderate risk has been shifted northeast. Computer models continue to shift to the northeast as well. Before we activate storm chase mode, I want to see what the newest Hurricane Center track has at landfall. Has it at 85. Further intensification is likely as Beryl moves over the very warm waters of the light shear conditions. Rapid intensification is a distinct possibility if the core can become isolated from the dry air that's been inhibiting intensification during the last day or two. That has been inhibiting. While there are no changes to the intensity forecast based on the latest guidance, we are expecting Beryl to be intensifying until landfall, and people should be preparing for the possibility of a Category 2 hurricane landfall. That's 45 minutes ago. Beryl's been better organized this morning. Satellite images show deep convection becoming more symmetric around the center. Brownsville radar has been showing an eye wall forming, although still open on its northwest side. It's about to close up. Flight level winds of 62 knots and a central pressure falling to 992. But definitely looks on track in terms of the location. Prepare for a Category 2 hurricane coming in. We're just going to continue to watch this gradually intensify, likely with that eye starting to get carved out as well as the convection wraps all the way around. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Brian's going to be going live with us in the field later on today. Thank you, Lauren Adcock. Raleigh, tropical storm level rainfall this week. Yep. Yeah, I'd say probably tropical showers up there, Lauren. I wouldn't be too worried about a catastrophic rain event up there in the Carolinas, but I do think you're going to have that tropical moisture getting infused in there. Probably a couple of flash flood warnings seem likely up there. Oh yeah, Houston, you know how to deal with these big rainmakers and tropical systems when they come in, but if it is a Category 2 and pushes a little bit further off to the right, that could cause problems. And remember that Harvey also on approach to the coastline was basically a tropical storm or a lower end hurricane, and then ended up making landfall as a Category 4. Just mass chaos out there. Yep, we are going to be going live providing you that ground perspective. There is a 5% tornado threat as well. And here is the center of that hurricane. It does look like it's starting to close off on the western side. Eventually all this convection is going to wrap all the way around. And then the storm system will begin that rapid intensification. There is a little bit of dry air just outside of the system, but it's a lot more moist as you get closer to Texas, as evidenced by all the precipitation upstream and those blobs of storms that we went through the Austin area as well. So thank you, everybody, for tuning into this weather report. Please share this live stream if you know anybody in this area. It's going to be saved right after I sign off, and then we are going to hit the road and begin our coverage of this dangerous tropical cyclone. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Welcome, new Team Dominator members. Yes, Grumpy Cat, I already talked about the tornado chances. We think this is going to be a tornado outbreak in East Texas, across the Texas Piney Woods, including the Houston area, and also a little bit inland from Houston. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in.